Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Welcome into another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. Mike, we can finally have some good questions this week, right? After a Hogs win.
Good, but in a little bit better mood, but we still got some people that are mad. We'll find out about all that.
Mad questions this week. Come on, gotta be happy.
We got a few.
All right, well, let's get right into it, shall we? Our first question is from Winnell Wyndham, who wants to know, do you think the internet complainers finally get it? Do they understand that our coaches didn't suddenly become dummies in the offseason? Change one missed Cam Little field goal, and if KJ doesn't get hurt, this team is 9-2. That's the difference, not bad coaching.
Yeah, I do think, obviously, a lot of fans get that, but some don't, and they will continue to argue that it's coaching, even though there's evidence to the contrary, because that's the internet, and I believe in free speech. You have a right to look goofy when you post things on the internet if you want to. You have a right to be wrong, and those people that are still blaming it on coaching, they were wrong before and they're wrong now. The only concession I will make to that is you might possibly argue, they should have had a better plan for backup quarterback. They might have won a game or two more if you had a better backup situation. I think they're working on that so that it won't be a problem next year. But that doesn't make you a bad coach. It just means you misevaluated a situation, thought you could turn your backup into a more viable guy, and you didn't do it. We hashed that over last week. Kendall Briles does have a reputation of developing not just one but two quarterbacks on a team. He's done it at other places. So there's that. But there's this, and we really need to consider this. There are a lot of people out there that are now kind of warming up to Odom a little bit, but they still think Briles has got to go. Well, I read this and I checked it out. Arkansas is on pace in the next two games to get right at 6,000 yards total offense for the season. If they do that, they will be the number 3 most productive offensive football team ever at the University of Arkansas under any coach, anytime. So if Kendall Briles is your offensive coordinator and it looks like you're going to be number 3 at all time, what happens to all those other coordinators that are behind him? Are they dummies? Did they need to go? So, no, he's not a dummy. He does things that fans don't like sometimes, but the numbers speak for itself. You know, when he's got a healthy quarterback, his offense works a lot better. It's not coaching, it's who's out there on the field.
Yeah, when everybody is healthy, you see what the defense has been able to accomplish with healthy players, right? It's about guys getting
such
healthy.
A difference.
It's huge. Billy Feeman asked, can you explain to me how there was no blocking the last two games, that Rocket ran for 106 yards combined against Liberty and LSU, but had 232 yards against Ole Miss? It was like somebody hypnotized him and then unhypnotized him.
Yeah, there was no hypnosis involved.
Yeah, that's a very intriguing.
It's really pretty easy to explain. And you have to go to the start of the Ole Miss game. The first offensive possession, Arkansas had to punt. They didn't go anywhere. Then the second possession where they scored, the first two plays were Rocket trying to run the ball, and I think they gained 3 yards. Why did that happen? Why did it happen on the first possession? Because they were stacked to stop the run. They looked at the game plan for Liberty, what Liberty did, what LSU did, and they say, hey, this is what we do. Okay, on that second possession, the first touchdown possession from Arkansas, they held, I think it was 3rd and 7. Then what happens? KJ Jefferson throws about a 13, 15-yard pass. Then he reels off a 30-yard run. Then all of a sudden they score. Then guess what happens the next time they come out? Rocket starts going off. Now, why did that happen? Because all of a sudden the defense can't stack to stop him alone. They got to worry about KJ. They got to worry about the receivers. And when you spread a defense out like that and you don't let them stack to stop the run, boy, isn't it amazing how a guy suddenly looks good again, and how all that blocking that you didn't have, and all of a sudden the offensive line is not motivated and they're not playing, all of a sudden it gets a lot better. I always like to use real life examples from a million years ago. Still remember being on a high school team where I admit all these years later, our head coach, who was our play caller, was not very good. At least we didn't think he was. And I can remember the wide receiver, he rotated in wide receivers to bring the plays in. And I can remember the wide receivers coming in, and they knew we weren't going to like the play. and they would whisper it to the quarterback like we weren't going to hear it. And we're all gathered in a huddle, and just like, he wants 123, blah, blah, blah. And you could just hear guys under their breath going, oh, no, not that, because those offensive linemen knew what was going to happen. They wanted a creative play. Throw it a little bit. We had a tight end that could catch the ball. Our wide receiver was the fastest guy in our district, and they never threw the ball to him, and we had a pretty good passing quarterback. He just wanted to run the ball to the fullback, wanted to run the fullback. And every time he called one of those fullback trap plays, it was like, oh, not again. So it makes a big difference when your play calling is creative and you have options.
Yeah, and also makes a difference when you have guys who are healthy, right? A healthy offensive line with Dalton Wagner coming back, that, all of those things make a difference.
All of them are a factor.
All of them are a factor. Hog Hillbilly asks, thankfully, we scored 42 early after Rockets scored to start the third quarter. This was a completely different second half. Why did Pittman let off the throttle so early? That could have been a disaster. South Carolina put up 63 on Tennessee and didn't let off the throttle.
Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm not going to criticize it because I've said you have a right to think what you want, but I am going to examine the question. I don't think I've ever had a question that starts off with, thankfully we scored 42 early. If you score 42 early, there's not much else to talk about, really, is there? I mean, what are the odds of if you score 42 points early, you're going to lose the game? What, 1 in 50, 1 in 75, 1 in 100? It doesn't happen very often. It could happen, but not very often. So that's interesting right off the bat. And then there's this. After Rockets scored to start the third quarter, this was a completely different second half. It was a different second half, and here's why. Because Sam Pittman really, and there was another factor you've got to add in. Arkansas scored to go up 42-6. But then Ole Miss came out, drove to midfield, and fumbled, and Arkansas had the ball again. And there's about 9 minutes left to go. You've already knocked off about, 4 minutes,
yeah.
five minutes off the second quarter. He knew at that point there was not, unless Arkansas did something really stupid, there was not enough time in the game for Ole Miss to mount any kind of a comeback. So he went into what I call a safe mode. What is a safe mode? We're not going to throw a pass and get picked off. We're not going to fumble in our own end of the field. We're going to burn up all of the play clock each time we run a play, and if we have to go 3 and out and punt, we've still burned up a couple of minutes, and then we'll make them work to score to go down the field, and they don't have enough time to score. So there's that. But then this could have been a disaster. No, it couldn't have been a disaster. It would have only been a disaster if Sam Pittman had done what you want him to do, which was continue to throw the ball and take chances. Maybe they would have made some mistakes. Maybe it would have helped Ole Miss. You don't do that at that point. And then, and this was real interesting too, about Shane Beamer and what he did as opposed to what Sam Pittman did. I'm reading online on Facebook, and there's 3 or 4 of these people that are honestly lecturing Sam Pittman. In other words, we like you, Sam, but you need to pay attention to what Shane Beamer did because he did it right. You don't show enough in your you don't show enough faith in your players when you make that defense have to just stay out there and you're not doing. It's just you're just not doing the right thing on the part of your players. So let me just answer that. The South Carolina Tennessee game was a totally different situation. At the time, same point in the third quarter that Arkansas was up 42-3, South Carolina was up on Tennessee by 4 points. It was a close game. So when South Carolina scored, they wanted to score again and again because they wanted to put as much distance between them and Tennessee as possible to get in the position where Arkansas was already early in the third quarter. So I don't think Shane Beamer intentionally scored 60 plus points and ran the score up on them. I just think he was desperate to make sure they didn't come back. That was never going to be an issue with Arkansas. Now, Alyssa Orange of our staff, our boss, she pointed this out, and she did a good bit of research on this. It was interesting. While most fans think Arkansas was just messing around offensively in the fourth quarter and giving up 21 unanswered points because they kept going 3 and out, guess what they did? They burned up 8.5 minutes of clock time, leaving Ole Miss's offense with 6.5 minutes of clock time. So you're down 42-6 to start the fourth quarter, and you've got 6.5 minutes to make that up. It's impossible unless you just start throwing interceptions and fumbling and doing all this stuff.
Mistakes, yeah.
So, and then here's the other thing you have to consider, which a lot of these fans don't consider. Imagine Shane Beamer's situation next year when they go to Knoxville. I know why he did what he did. I don't think he was trying to run the score up, but what's going to happen next year? I don't want to be him or South Carolina when they go to Tennessee next year. There's 105,000 fans that are going to be going bonkers. Pittman does not have to go back to Oxford with this notion that you ran the score up on us, because he basically shut it down, and they know he shut it down.
Yeah.
You have to understand your head coach. He has not shown in any of the 3 years that he's been here any desire to run the score up on people. Now, it hasn't happened a lot that you had an opportunity, but we've seen times when they had the game won midway through the fourth quarter, late fourth quarter, they don't continue to go down and try to score. He just shuts it down, because as he said after the game when he was talking to the guy, after the on-the-field guy, he looked up at the scoreboard and he said, maybe I shut it down a little early, but as I look up at that scoreboard, I see we've got more points than they do. That's all I care about. So that's who you've got as a head coach. If you don't like it, I don't know anything you can do about it, because he's old school and he's looking toward next year. He's not going to have to deal with his own players. Imagine the coaching job you're going to have to do this week if your players are sitting there thinking, Ole Miss is a lot better than Missouri. We just beat those guys 60 to whatever. We're not going to have any problems this week, but now they can't say that because it ended up being a 15-point game. So, in my opinion, Sam Pittman did everything right in that game. I have no criticism of anything. After all these games in which you can pick apart, he didn't do this, they should have done that, blah, blah, blah. I don't see any fault with anything that happened in that game.
Yeah, exactly. Bacon's Rebellion says, I was truly pleased with the defense against Ole Miss, but it's ironic and comical that we gave up 703 yards. North Carolina State beat Virginia in 1944 with 10 total yards of offense. Could we have set an obscure record for most yards given up in a win?
Man, that was a piece of trivia that is hard to. I didn't know that. That's amazing. I will talk about one of the first TV games I ever remember seeing. Now, we didn't own a television set. My parents didn't have one. My dad didn't believe in TV. He was a big radio guy. He grew up in the radio, and he was like, TV is terrible. So we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a TV. So my buddy down the street, he had a bowl game on. I can't remember what bowl game it was, but I do remember I got down there and it snowed wherever this was, and everyone was frozen. I mean, it was just buried. These fans are snowing on them. And it ended up being 3-0. The whole game was played, and the team that won kicked a field goal, and that was the difference. Now, those fans were perfectly fine. I was perfectly fine. I sat there and watched the game and didn't get mad. Do you think you could get away with that these days?
Nope.
The TV people would be going crazy. They'd be doing what these TV people did in the Arkansas game. They'd just take it over and turn it into something else, right? Because this game is boring. So that's the way it used to be. Still, I'm having a hard time sort of considering a game that you sit and watch and one team wins with 10 yards total offense. The only way it seems like to me that could happen is if you maybe got a safety against them, or maybe they fumbled in the end zone and you fell on it, because I don't know how else you beat somebody with 10 yards of total offense. So that's pretty interesting. Now, as far as Arkansas setting a record, I don't know. Is that the most number of yards total offense given up by a team that won a football game, 700 plus? I don't know. Maybe somebody out there will look it up. I'm not going to.
You're not going to look up the stat,
No,
but you'll let somebody else handle that. Mousetown wants to know, why didn't they kick the Ole Miss player who took a swing at Jefferson out of the game? Seems to me that a personal foul penalty wasn't nearly enough. I thought it was outrageous.
Yeah, if you looked at the replay on that, because you and I were watching it.
Yeah.
We were back in the studio all nice and warm while Alyssa and everybody else froze. They made an interesting point on the replay. It looked, because I'm watching this thing when it first happened, I'm thinking, is this the dumbest player who ever lived? You have K.J. Jefferson sacked for about a 15-yard loss, and you're going to hit him and wipe that out and then get a penalty the other direction? But when they showed the replay, it looked like he was trying to punch down and punch I think he had the ball up around his chest.
Yeah, he did.
And he's trying to punch it out. So he went like that, but then everybody moved and it kind of bounced off of him. It looked like he was swinging at it.
Yeah.
I think the refs were they didn't know for sure, so they called the penalty. But I think they didn't kick him out because there was just that doubt of what was his intent, because you don't know for sure. But when you have a doubt as to intent, you're going to leave him in the game, but go ahead and assess the penalty. And I think he just did it wrong. I think if you reach out like that and try to pull it out, but instead,
but he made a fist.
He made a fist and he tried to punch it out. And if he'd have hit it just right, maybe it would have been effective. But I don't think he was trying to hit KJ because there was no talking going on. Nobody was mouthing or anything like that. They didn't look mad at each other. I just think he thought he could knock it loose by punching it downward and punching it out of his hands.
Yeah, I think so as well. Blood Red Hog asks, what do you believe our record would be if KJ had been healthy all year?
Well, we've already had our opening question.
Somebody said 9-2.
She said 9-2.
Yeah.
I'll make one concession to that. I think it would have been either 9-2 and 8-3, or 8-3. And the reason I say possibly 8-3 is because the A&M game really wasn't KJ being hurt. That was Cam Little missing a field goal that he normally doesn't miss, and it was KJ making a kind of a goofy mistake that he wouldn't normally make, and then a fluke fumble pickup go all the way down the other end. Yeah. So I don't think that loss itself had anything to do with KJ not being healthy. It was just, a weird deal where a really bad A&M. Now we look back on that loss and say, that's just horrible. You lost to those goobers.
Yeah.
They can't beat anybody. So I'm going to say if KJ was healthy all year long, it'd be 8-3 right now.
Okay, I could see.
Not 9-2.
Yeah, I could see because those things could have still happened.
You're still probably going to lose to Alabama not because of KJ, but the defense just wasn't set back then. The same thing with the Mississippi State. You just didn't have your defense the way it is right now. Now, if the defense was the way it is right now, you'd be undefeated.
Yeah, I agree with you as well.
What we're seeing right now, this is what the fans need to really stop and wrap their heads around. You came within 4 points of beating the SEC West champs 2 weeks ago with your starting quarterback out. If you'd had your starting quarterback in the game, Arkansas had won by 2 or 3 touchdowns playing that kind of defense. And you just went up against an Ole Miss team that was averaging over 30 points a game, and didn't have a touchdown going into the fourth quarter. And honestly, as I will admit, even though I think Sam did the right thing, if Arkansas had continued to try to score, it would have been an annihilation.
Yeah,
so really I don't think fans really appreciate how good this team is right now. If this team played the whole season the way they're doing right now, they'd be undefeated.
Yeah, I agree as well. Did they catch the Arkansas fan who stole the Ole Miss player's helmet after the game? I hope so, because it makes us all look bad.
As of today, Monday, they have not identified him. I think we talked to the UAPD, our news department did, and they want to catch him.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have some help. So
they put the picture out of him, too.
They've got a picture out there, so if you go find it, it's a screenshot of a video that was shot. So if you have that and you know anything about it. Now, Sam Pittman issued a statement. If we got that, I think we got graphics on it. It's unfortunate. I hope they get it. I hope they get it back. We'd be madder than mad if somebody stole ours. Our fans are better than that. We average 73,000. It takes one to screw it up. That's Sam Pittman's statement on this. So hopefully they'll catch this guy.
Yeah.
The main thing is to get them their helmet back. This makes Arkansas look bad because you win a game and think, oh, yeah, they won the game, but what jerks,
And those helmets are expensive.
Exactly. So you go there and your helmets aren't safe because of the fans that steal them.
I don't like that. We don't want that.
I've been covering college football here for 47th season. No one's ever stole a helmet before, but all it takes is one time and everybody thinks, it's unsafe.
I've seen some wild things stolen in college, so you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, you just hate to see it, but hopefully they catch him. Hog in Iowa says, we know the head coaches from each school send videos of bad calls to the SEC home office every week, but nothing seems to come from it. I envision the SEC head of officials sitting around a table having a good old laugh.
Well, that's funny.
I do like that.
But I don't think that's what happens. And here's why I don't think that's what happens. Because if he did that, sooner or later the word would get back to the 14 SEC coaches that when you send in a report complaining about officials, the head of officials is going to laugh about it. And at that point, Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, would have a horrible problem on his hands. So I'm pretty sure that no one is sitting in the SEC office laughing about this. Here's what I think happens. I do think that they look at these things from a skeptical standpoint because everybody's going to submit something based on what they see. They're not looking at it from any other point of view but their own. So the head of officials, when he looks at these complaints, you got to go back and study the video and see if the guy really has a point. The other thing is something that I've said over and over again. Officials make mistakes. They don't do it on purpose. If players make mistakes, which they do all the time, and coaches make mistakes, which they do all the time, why are officials supposed to be perfect? They probably, percentage-wise, get more things right than the players or the coaches do. But when they make a mistake, it's pretty obvious. The SEC does have a history, if something is very egregious, of suspending crews, the entire crew. If there's an especially bad situation where they review it and they conclude, yeah, the officials probably cost this other team the game, this is bad, we're going to suspend this crew. Occasionally they remove somebody. It's very unusual. What they prefer to do is just suspend them, make them stop and think about it a little bit, go back and review what they did. So again, we're coming off a game where, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but all over the internet today, Ole Miss fans are basically saying, we got the shaft.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And they're basically implying that they would have won the game otherwise, which is not true. But isn't it weird to finally have a game where it's the other team that's complaining about the officiating, not Arkansas fans? It's a good position to be in. I just think the officials aren't doing this on purpose, but it's fun to make fun of them anyway.
Yeah, definitely. We always enjoy that, right? Havoc wants to know, will the football staff put pressure on those who haven't appeared to move up the depth chart to move on? With the only rule being the 85 scholarship limit, we should really use opportunity to replace/upgrade depth as much as possible with those transfers.
Yeah, Sam Pittman addressed this last week. At his Monday press conference, and he basically said everything you're saying. But here's the way he put it. He said, look, I don't like the transfer portal. I wish it didn't exist. I would much rather just everybody goes out and recruits freshmen and then we develop our freshmen. But he said, I'm not stupid enough to sit here and let all the coaches around me use the portal while I stick to the old system. And he said, so what we're going to do now, and the change is, before there were rules on how many you could bring into the portal. Now it doesn't matter. It's just as long as you're under the 85 limit. So if you felt like you had 6 players or 7 or 8 players that weren't going to help you next year, you could encourage all of them to leave with the idea you're going to bring 8 more out of the portal. There's nothing to stop you now from doing mass changes. And what Sam Pittman pointed out is you can do a quicker fix. All you have to do is look at Drew Sanders, Matt Landers. These are guys that did things that you couldn't get by recruiting a true freshman. You get an instant fix at certain positions, and as Sam said, I can't ignore that. And so they're going to do more of it, not less of it, now that this new rule is in place where there's no real limit on how many you can bring in out of the portal, except you can't go over the 85.
Yeah, and I think there are going to be some positions where we see there are a lot of transfers that come in.
Well, he's already said after the game, I think he said on Monday, today, he said, after our game next week, you're going to see a lot of movement in the portal. And we've already seen one already gone anyway.
Yeah, we have. We have definitely seen one already gone, maybe 2 even, right? Because James Joyner today
James Joyner is
leaving.
who I was referring to,
okay.
freshman running back.
There you go, okay. And Hob Hog asks, Warren Thompson was the other one.
Warren Thompson earlier.
Will Moclair said, Warren Thompson.
Yeah,
Warren
that
Thompson.
was last week.
That was last week, so that's what I was referring to. Hob Hog asked, why doesn't the media have access to O.C. Browse and D.C. Odom? Is this common around the league? Do they both prefer it that way?
I think I've covered 9 coaches at Arkansas, and every one of them had a little bit different system in terms of media access. Sometimes when you had a transition, it was a big one, sometimes a small transition. I think Sam Pittman has explained that a lot of the stuff he does as a head coach is based on working under Kirby Smart, and Smart was very successful, so he's observing this guy and going, yeah, he's got it right. Now, he has not explained this part of it. He's just said that's the way Kirby did it. So I'm going to guess here, but I'm going to take a guess that, number one, Sam Pittman. Now, coordinators are different from other assistant coaches in that assistant coaches don't make the decisions that coordinators do. Coordinator's in charge of his area, offense, defense, kicking game. So they often make decisions that may backfire and be controversial. And I think Kirby Smart and now Sam Pittman want to be in a position where those guys don't get asked, why did you do this in some situation? They want you to ask the head coach, and then they will shoulder the blame because I'm the head coach. So he's doing that in part to protect these guys, letting them be free to do what they have to do. But whenever there's an issue, I'm going to have their backs. So that's one of them. The other thing is, and I'm not sure, what's really going on here, but I think sometimes and I don't think anybody in the media, at least not our media, intentionally tries to do this, but sometimes when you're talking to somebody, you get a response out of them as far as an explanation about something, and it might be in direct contrast to what a coach says. His answer might not be what Pittman would say about the same thing. And he doesn't want that conflict. He doesn't want them to it gives the impression of chaos. Remember the question last week about the game plan for a specific player? And the way it came out it was like we didn't have a game plan. Well, it was just something a player said that gave the wrong impression. They had a game plan. They just didn't game plan for a guy, which is pretty unusual. So I think he's trying to keep things like that from coming up, where a coordinator says one thing, head coach maybe says something else, and then all the media is going, well, wait a minute, these guys aren't on the same page. Well, you don't have that if the coordinators are not talking. And in the off season, he gives us access to them a couple of times. So it's not like never.
No,
And I just think overall he's trying to protect them and keep them away from controversy and shoulder it himself.
Yeah, and it's school by school and coach by coach. So
and we would prefer to talk to them, yes, because we want to, but we don't get to do that.
We don't get to do that. So there you go. Tired of Hogs sucking wants to know. I love that username. If the Hogs can get bowl eligible to a lower tier bowl, what should be the focus during the extra practices? Build depth for next year by working some younger players into the game plan, or just win the bowl game at all costs to provide momentum going into next year?
No, your first priority is always to win the bowl game.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of
Now,
course.
Let's say you got way ahead or way behind in the bowl game. You might, in that situation, put 2 or 3, 4 guys in just to see how they'll do. You've got guys that you may think need to play next year, but you're not sure. You might do that. But mostly that kind of stuff is done in the bowl practices. That's why getting a bowl bid is so important, because you got that 2-week plus period where you have your regular workout, and then what coaches always do is they let the starters go in, and then they scrimmage the guys that may be playing next year, because they're trying to look and see. And now you're not just doing it to see who might play next year.
Yeah.
Like you're looking at, okay, where are you losing people? Maybe we need some tight ends next year. Maybe we need more offensive linemen. So you're not just looking at possible replacements. You're also looking at guys and going, you're not sure that they can help. So you're going to encourage them to hit the portal based on what you see. But they don't do it in bowl games. They do it in scrimmaging and bowl practices.
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to win the bowl game.
Yeah, and he said a lower tier bowl as well, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if you're in a higher tier bowl, it's all about winning.
You don't want to lose the bowl game.
Like, you have to win. That helps recruits coming in, all of it. So Razor Alex 88 says, it looks like Gus is trying to steal away Malachi Singleton from us. It's hard to believe a university that will soon be going to the Big 12 would be more attractive than playing the SEC. We really cannot lose Malachi to Gus. What are the options if this were to happen?
Well, you can relax, because Otis Kirk, our recruiting guru, who's been doing it longer than anybody else, football recruiting, I talked to him yesterday, and he said, first of all, Malachi Singleton's mother was posting photos online last week of buying Razorback gear.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be doing that if your kid was going somewhere else. You'd be wasting your money. Also, Otis says he's pretty sure that he's going to have Malachi himself on this Sunday's Pig Trail show when they do the Arkansas Football Recruiting Report. So you might want to tune in for that and get the whole story from Malachi himself. But Otis said to me, look, he's not going to agree to come on my show if he's not coming here, because I'm going to ask him some questions. So I think you can relax. I think maybe you just want to go see Disney World or whatever.
That's what I said. I'm like, hey, take your visits. Go enjoy. Like,
yeah.
Orlando's a great place, so.
Yeah, Gus lost anyway. He's not going to go there. He got beat by Navy or Army, or who beat him? It was Navy.
It was like someone,
Navy, Army,
UCF
Army.
is,
I think it was Navy.
Yeah, I think it was Navy too. But I think you're right. I think he just wanted to take a trip to Disney World. So, and who wouldn't take a trip to Disney World?
I would go.
You would
Gus
go?
wants
You
to
would
have me
take it?
down there. If he wants to pay for my trip down there, I'll
There
go
you
to Disney
go.
World on Gus.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I love that. Lake City Hog wants to know, what are the chances of the following guys returning next year? So we've got KJ Jefferson, Zach Williams, Luke Jones, and Drew Sanders that he wants to know about.
Okay, I think Jefferson and Williams, they're coming back. Luke Jones, I'm not sure about. Maybe you know. I haven't heard.
I mean, I listened to him in the press conference, and he was, he just didn't really know. He was like, let's get through these games, and then I'll let you know.
And then Drew Sanders is gone. I mean, he's going to be a high draft choice, I think. He's accomplished his purpose. He came here. They saw what he could do, and he's been maybe Arkansas's most productive defensive player. So I think I don't know where he's going to go. I'm not a draft expert, but I couldn't imagine him below the third round. I think he's pretty high up. So he's got great size for a linebacker, speed, range. So I don't think we're going to see Drew Sanders back. But we got Pooh Paul. He's come on strong this year. All they got to do is bring in another. They bring a guy out of the portal if they want to.
Yeah, get another guy. Maybe steal one from Alabama.
Yeah, get another one. Get one from Georgia.
I'd love that. Or one from Georgia. PG Hog 1 asks, why did Hunter Yurachek schedule Notre Dame, Okie State, Utah with our always tough conference? Doesn't seem the other conference schools do this on a yearly basis. I know next year the non-conference schedule is somewhat better, but we seem to do it almost yearly.
Yeah, the Notre Dame deal goes all the way back to Jeff Long, so you can't lay that off on Yurachek or Pittman or anybody else. That was done a long time ago, and then Notre Dame, because of COVID, backed out, and it was kicking the can down the road. They're still out there, but that's not the current AD. I will admit, though, the current AD has upgraded these non-conference games, and here's what I think his reasoning is: we need to make money. You bring a rent-a-win team in here and we draw what, 50,000? I want to draw 72. So you bring a good team in here that's playing very well. It makes it harder to win, but when you win, it's better. And I think Sam Pittman, if he disagreed with on this, I don't think it would be done. So I think Sam is going along with this, but the bottom line on it is it doesn't matter, because when I keep talking about this new governing body for college football, whenever it comes into being in 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, it's all going to change. You're going to see an end to these rent-a-win games, and so the kind of schedule Arkansas has played is going to be the norm, because when you play a non-conference game under that system, you're probably going to be playing teams from the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10. You're not going to be playing mid-majors. Yeah. That's the plan for this, to make sure that you're drawing a lot of people to every game, and it's a good TV game.
That's what I was about to say, and there's a chance for that game to be on TV as well.
Yeah,
and that helps the university.
So that's why it's being done.
Yeah, 100%. Hogbowski, I like that.
That's it.
On Hogville says, you're mentioning this past week looking for a backup QB in the portal. Got me to wondering, have we had any updates on the recovery and development of Cade Renfro?
You know, I kept trying to find that out, and there's been no update that I know of. The only thing I can tell you is he's had 2 knee surgeries now in 2 years. That's tough.
Wow.
Doesn't mean he won't try to come back, but a lot of times guys at that point, it's the same process, you know, with different people that have these back-to-back surgeries. Sometimes they come back and they're fine, and sometimes they don't. It's an individual decision. It is a tough rehab road back, so I think he's got to look at who's. Now, I will say this: if he'd been healthy this year, I think he would have ended up as the backup quarterback eventually. I think they gave every opportunity to Malik Hornsby, but I think he would have been. He played some at Ole Miss. He'd been in the SEC, so I think he would have ended up being the second option. But now he's got to look at next year and who they have, and I have no idea who that's going to be. But I have heard that Arkansas is going to try to bring in somebody out of the portal that they will play some with KJ to just get KJ off the field some, so he's not going to get beat up next year the way he has this year. And then you've got Malachi coming in here, so you'll have at least 2 backup options at quarterback. You try to develop Malachi by the end of the year. So again, I don't know what he's going to do, but he has to make a decision. Is it worth to go through all the rehab to get back to where maybe you have a chance, and maybe it looks like they have better options at backup now. So I don't know. Yeah,
kind of a up in the air thing. Small Town Hog 95 asked, does this basketball team give you any Phi Slamma Jamma vibes? More talent and athleticism than you could shake a stick at. That doesn't really shoot the three well. But who really needs a bunch of three-pointers when dunking the ball is a much higher percentage
well,
shot?
you need shooting, and
Yes,
I
you
think
do.
there are at least some signs in these first two games that they actually shoot the ball better than maybe we think. I think the bad shooting thing came in part from Musselman. If you'll remember, he had a press conference after the red-white game and said, I think you can forget about this being a good shooting team. It's just not there. And he said that based on watching them all through summer in practice and in those European games.
Yeah.
I think he was kind of gigging them a little bit, because in the first game, they shot 38% from three, and then this game the other night, they shot 40%. So that's not terrible. That's pretty decent three-point shooting. So before we give up on this team in terms of three-point shooting, I think we need to see more about what happens. But he's right. They do a lot of other things really well. They run the floor, they rebound, they play defense. So
They really do.
Yeah.
I think it'll be telling when they play in Maui this week. You
Right.
know, I mean, I think that those games with the higher talent on those teams, I think we'll see.
that's the big question mark now.
Yes, that is the big question for. As we record this, they haven't played their first game
That's
at Maui
right.
just yet. So I'm excited to watch that game after we get done with this. But Darren DeLoach says, when I was 9, my dad took me to the old Mid-South Coliseum to see the Hogs thump a pretty good Memphis State team. What basketball programs would you like to see scheduled regularly? For me, it's Memphis, Texas, Kansas, and Houston.
You know, I can't argue with that group.
Yeah, I like those.
Those are all good games, especially Memphis, because it's how close it is. What you really need to ask yourself is, what would be good home and home? You know, sometimes you play these teams in a tournament type situation, but if you're scheduling teams like that, you probably got to do home and home if you're playing in December. So who would you want to do that? Well, I think Oklahoma State would be a good home and home because
I
they're
think so,
close.
too.
We're close to them. You could have fans going back and forth. So I would like to see that. Oklahoma, I would say, except for now, it would be good. They're coming into the league in 2025, so you'll be playing them anyway. But games like that, Memphis, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, teams that are good, that are on the borders of Arkansas where you can get a lot of cross-travel among fans, those are the games I would favor.
Yeah, and I like the Texas as well. Kansas and Houston.
Well, you can't go wrong playing Texas.
I know, you can't go wrong, especially, you know, with that exhibition game this year, how much that drummed up in support for having that game regularly. Marty Bird's Proxy asked, with this basketball team traveling to Hawaii currently, what are some memorable trips from past seasons? It seems Eddie's team went to Alaska in 1980. Well, that's pretty cool. Any games or events stand out on this or other tournaments?
Not from a personal standpoint, because I never went to any of those, much to my...
You didn't go to any of them?
I've never been to Hawaii to cover any of these basketball. I've been to Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
But not to cover the basketball program. You know how it goes. That's expensive to send somebody out there, and you're out there for a few days. It's December.
Listen, Mike, I tried to go.
I didn't ask, but I worked for 2 different stations in this market. You're not going to Hawaii. Like I said, I went, but I didn't go there for that. So I'll just kind of take you down memory lane. We've got some graphics that show what they did. Arkansas's first trip to Hawaii was in 1977. It wasn't a tournament. They just played Hawaii twice, and Arkansas won. Eddie Sutton won both games. In '83, Sutton took his Hogs to the Rainbow Classic, where they beat Iowa but lost to Georgia Tech and Iowa. Or Iowa State, I think, right?
Yeah, Iowa State. Yeah.
Iowa State beat them, and then they lost 2 straight. In '86, Nolan made his first trip to Hawaii, and Arkansas beat Ohio State, lost to Pitt, and beat Cal. In '91, Arkansas went back this time to the Maui Invitational and beat Minnesota and Chaminade, but lost to Michigan. Arkansas's best trip to Hawaii came in '94. This was Nolan's national runner-up team eventually in '95. That was the Rainbow Classic. The Hogs took out Oklahoma, Cincinnati, and Iowa, winning the tournament.
Nice.
Nolan's last trip to Hawaii was the Big Island Classic with a win over Mercer, a loss to Iowa State, and a win over Santa Clara. Nolan by far had the best record of any of the coaches that have gone to Hawaii. In 2005, Stan Heath made his only trip there. Arkansas was back in the Maui Classic. Not a good trip. Lost to Cal, went over Minnesota, lost to Gonzaga. And then in 2013, Mike Anderson took his guys to what at the time was called the EA Sports Maui Classic, and they lost to Cal, beat Minnesota, and lost to Gonzaga. So that's 8 trips, 1 tournament title, and that by one of Nolan's best teams. So overall, I think Arkansas had a winning record in Hawaii,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens in this one because they'll be playing 3 more games.
Did you have a favorite out of all of those?
Yeah, I liked the time they won the thing.
Yeah,
Nolan
when they
swept
won the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, Nolan's 95 team. And I think if the 94 team had gone to Hawaii, they would have swept through that thing too.
Yeah, I bet so. Well, our final question of the show is going to be from Lost in Swine, and he wants to know, what did you think of the presentation of the announcers on the field in the Arkansas-Ole Miss game by the SEC Network? I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, Mike.
Let me just start off by saying I'm not the best guy to ask that to, because you know that I'm so old school. I don't like listening to announcers anyway.
Well, you don't like the Peyton and Eli Monday Night Football show.
No, I don't. I don't watch that, and if I'm not around other people who want to listen, I will turn it down. I will turn the announcers down. And then if it looks like there's a call on the field that's in dispute or something, you know, where they're going to have access to information you don't have watching on television, I'll turn it up but I don't want to listen to their banter. Well, this was like that on steroids. Because first of all, you got these guys down on the field and their mics aren't working, it's going in and out, and it's annoying as crap. It just drives you crazy. And then the worst thing that could happen with regard to them being there is when the game turned into a blowout, what do? They're told, take the game over. It's so bad, you guys have to become the focus of the game. No, people still want to see it, even if it's a blowout. I guess just like the one guy that felt like it could have been a disaster, they still think Ole Miss might come back. So you can't just do what these guys did. And what were they doing? Oh, they were sitting down with people all around them, and they were eating candy and stuff. And one guy went over and sat next to an Ole Miss player on the bench and started asking him if he was cold. Now put yourself in the place of that kid. This TV guy is talking to you. Okay, fine, I can turn and talk to him, but what if I get back and Lane Kiffin sees that and calls me into his office and go, what were you doing? We're getting beaten. You're over there jacking and talking around, laughing around with the announcer? No, you're suspended. And then the same guy gets up and he starts yakking with the referees.
The ref during the game,
And
Jordan
then
Rogers.
he moves over to the other side of the field, and Barry Odom is over there making defensive calls, and he's back there going, okay, he just called this, he just said that, he just did this, he just did that. You think Odom wants him standing back there telling everybody what he's doing? Come on. So they went nuts. And to me, they should never be allowed to do that again. But that's me. And I think what happens in this world we live in, younger people love that stuff, and so we'll probably see more of it. They'll probably talk about how great it was.
Yeah, there was a lot of people on social media, at least on my social media, that loved it. That were absolutely like,
idiots,
this is hilarious.
but they have a right to be idiots.
This is great. Hey, I'm just telling you. I'm just giving you
they
the other
have
side.
a right to...
I thought it got out of hand. I thought it was funny in the beginning, but I thought it got out of hand when he lit his microphone on fire.
Here's what I would like to see. You know that you and Will and I are all on a YouTube TV thing.
Yes. Our family YouTube TV.
We get to split the cost, which is great.
Yeah.
I think we each pay $17 a month, and we see all the games we want to see.
Yeah.
Now, I initially argued that we should go ahead, because the price is already low, and go 4K. And we went 4K for a while, and here was the nice feature of 4K. When you clicked on the 4K game, they had surround sound. And I could manipulate my TV to where I could just barely hear the announcers, and mostly it was crowd noise. But we gave that up, and so I'm back. I can't do that right now.
Well, it's only because they only did a few games
That's right.
in
But
4K, Mike.
what if on...
Yeah, 2 games a week.
What if on streaming service these people get a clue and realize the value in that at some point down the road, and they give you an option? You can click, which game do you want? Do you want this normal like normal TV, or would you like this version? And they give you a version where you can click over to the crowd noise and sit there and listen to no announcers. And then if there's a controversy, you push a button and it brings the announcers up and you can hear what's going on, and then you kill the sound again. That would be perfect for me.
That'd be pretty cool. I think that's a pretty good plan or an idea.
I love it. I think they ought to do it. We need to be executives at these TV networks where we do the streaming, and we just say, this is a new feature. We're going to sell it.
I love it. Sounds great to me. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.